So we're talking about feedback and interaction here. As I was preparing for this program, I was doing a lot of studying of various models and thinking about some of the disciplines that we humans have created, or maybe some of the disciplines that have emerged on their own as a result of a bunch of humans interacting. It struck me that our maps and models of the world are very disconnected from the way the world, quote unquote, really is. There's like a really big gap. It's way more than it seems like it should be. And then as I kept drilling down and thinking about it, and a lot of this stuff I had had experience with, but it just came to me in a new way, like a new level of profundity, is that even the words that we use are disconnected from any kind of clear definition, and our individual definitions of the words diverge dramatically as well. Way more than intuitively it would feel like they should. So the way that I think about it is that if this is the sphere of kind of the way the world really is, and this is the sphere of our map of the way that we think it is, that's kind of about how much overlap the average human has. There's a real big disconnect there. And we have as much as we have to fill our face with the kind of food that we want to eat, right? Survive, reproduce, get to feel cool, that kind of thing. But that there are methods that some pretty amazing human chimps have developed to help align the maps or the models and get them closer to each other. And I'll just go up here to where we can get a lot of overlap. Okay, where we can overlap them more and more and more. The reason why we might want to do this, is that all success is a function of alignment and interactions between us, others, and the environment or the world. Okay, all great success, however you might want to think of that, whether it be on the physical internal or external, emotional internal, external, logical internal, external, always a function of the interaction between individual, group, and the external environment. Each plays a huge part. None can be removed, none can be reduced. And the better we understand those others, the better we understand the group, and the better we understand the environment and the way it, quote unquote, really works, the closer we can get, the more optimally we can set up the combinations and the interactions. And the further away we are, the more accidental they'll be, the more kind of random they'll seem, and the less control we'll have over the situation. The less we'll be able to create intentional success. All right, so over here I'm going to write you. Here I'm going to put the group. And then here I'm going to put environment. I'm going to shorten it so that it looks pretty. Now what I'm about to do is I'm going to connect these using some symbols that come from systems thinking. Okay, these are the symbols that they use in systems dynamics to draw a map of how things interact with each other and how they affect each other. So here, I might draw an arrow going from you to the group. And this signifies that you, okay, can have an impact on the group. You can interact with it. And then what I'm going to do over on this side is I'm going to draw another arrow coming back from the group up to you. And what this signifies is that the group can influence, impact, interact with you. You see where this is going? So then I can draw one from the group over here to the environment. And then I can draw one from the environment back to the group. And then I can draw one from the environment to you. And I can draw one from you to the environment. How many combinations? 6. So there are 6 different directions that are happening here. Does that make sense? 6 different ways that these 3 things can interact. This is obviously very simplified and very dumbed down. But once you look at this, you realize, oh, interesting. There are a lot of ways to get around this map. Right? A lot of ways to get around this map, and there are a lot of different feedback loops. So if I want to affect the group, I can do something to directly affect it as me, or I could say, hey, you know, is there something I could do in the environment that impacts me that then will impact the group? And I can see the connections here. Or I can even say, is there something that the group could do that will impact the environment, that will impact me, that will then impact the group? Or I can say, is there something that I can do to impact the environment that will impact the group, that will impact me, that will impact the group? Now this sounds like I'm just, looking at possibilities almost like a child would. This mapping here, this visualization, this is how to have access to the kind of thinking that we're talking about. We're going to be doing a lot more of this as we develop. Making a little process map, right, a little systems dynamics map like this, when you're working on problems, challenges, visions, goals, emergence, whatever it is that you're trying to solve, troubleshoot, doing it in your mind can be very valuable, because then you can start considering interactions. You can start seeing them, and with a map like this, what was once confusing and obscure becomes much more clear. Okay? So we'll just leave it there for now. So you remember the circles that are far apart and we want to connect them? My experience is the way to connect them is to incorporate feedback into the system. Okay, to get your map to match the world closer, to get it closer and closer, knowing it'll always be a map, we're just drawing more and more detail onto it. We need more feedback. And paradoxically, the way to get feedback is to go out and do things, usually that we're not comfortable doing, things that we don't know how to do, things that we're not good at. So we have to go do something we're not good at and get the feedback about it. So what's the feedback usually going to be saying? It's usually going to be saying you don't know what you're doing when it starts. Whatever it's saying, it's going to be saying you're not doing it right. And humans don't like to hear that. Right? A kind of a basic human need is to be right and to not be wrong. We really like being right. We really don't like being wrong. Warren Buffett if you ever study Warren Buffett, right, the most successful investor of all time, one of the richest people in the world, one of his main principles is this idea that he looks for information that proves that his way of looking at things is wrong. He looks to disprove his own assumptions. What the average human does is emotional estimation and seeing only validation. What Warren Buffett does is logical estimation and then seeing and seeking invalidation. And most of our egos can't handle that. And because we're pretty smart and we can think one or two loops ahead, right? One or two feedback loops ahead, we don't even go try stuff that we don't think we're going to be good at. We don't even go try it. Because we know if we go try it, that the first feedback we're going to be getting is, you're not good at this. And we can't stand to deal with that one. So after a lot of experience in business now and seeing this, seeing my own behavior with it and watching the behavior of a lot of others, and doing whatever I can to overcome this tendency in myself to resist trying something that seems uncomfortable because I don't want to see that feedback, I've noticed a few patterns that people use consistently, okay, a few strategies, whenever they're going to set out to accomplish something. The first strategy you probably have heard of. It's called paralysis of analysis. Okay, the first strategy is paralysis of analysis. I'm not going to talk about this in the traditional way, but it's when a person says, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to research everything on this topic and I'm going to figure everything out about it, and then I'm going to make my plan and then I'm going to go take action. And as they start researching, they realize, whoa, this is a big area. There's a lot to learn in here. Maybe I should learn a little more before I take action. I don't want to make a mistake. Boy, there's a lot of good information here. Let me just work on this and think about it. And then they get caught up in a loop of analysis, thinking about it, analysis, research, thinking about it, analysis, research, thinking about it. I run into this a lot. I ran into this a lot when I was teaching dating advice to men. Very consistently, what men will do, especially intelligent men, is they'll go, oh, look at this. There's information here that I can read, I can learn, I can study all these theories, and they get into it, and they get completely caught up in it to the point where I met a man once who was a very successful, financially successful, business successful man, intelligent, sharp, had a great job in one of the most well-known companies in the world. If I mentioned them, you'd know exactly who they were. Met him, was talking to him. He was in his 30s, and he had purchased a bunch of my dating products. And he said, yeah, my friend and I, we go on drives together, and we literally go drive for hours just so we can listen to your material. He's like, I've got this one of your programs, I've got it memorized by heart. I know the whole thing. And we like recite it back and forth to each other. It's like, I'm like, okay, well, you're serious about learning. Virgin. Here's a virgin. Couldn't use any of it. Didn't know how to use any of it, but found it fascinating. Right? I was like, why don't you go try some of it? I mean, take any idea and try it, and you're going to learn 1,000 times more than listening to it. Just doesn't strike us, so we get into paralysis of analysis. What happens, though, in paralysis of analysis? Because we're not going to dig into it and what it is and all that. You know what it is. What happens thinking about this information that we're sharing right now? How does it relate to what we're talking about? No feedback. Okay, so when you get into paralysis of analysis, you literally can't learn and you can't succeed. There's no way. You can't even accidentally succeed. at least if you're one of these people that boldly charges into something without doing any research and makes a lot of mistakes, at least you'll learn. Paralysis of analysis, you will not. And really intelligent people get caught up in this because you get into all these intellectual battles in your head. Well, that's right, this is wrong. And one of my favorites is, getting in discussions with super bright, highly intelligent, intellectual people that don't have any experience, who can give you all the reasoning why something won't work or why it's a bad idea or why some other thing should be better. But they don't know, like they can't do it. I usually have to just start laughing because it's just comedic, right? And if you get caught in that world, you're kind of gone. It's a fantasy world. The other strategy I'll call death by planning. Okay? So paralysis of analysis is when you get caught up in your head and you haven't even really made it to the planning phase yet. But death by planning is a combination of planning and doing. And death by planning is taking a long time to make a very, very detailed plan, planning the way the whole thing's going to go, setting up exactly what you're going to do. And here's the key piece: planning what the results of what you do will be, and then assuming that you're right. That's a key. Planning what the results will be, and assuming that you're right in your estimate, and then going out and executing the plan as per the specification, and assuming that any problem with the results, anywhere that things aren't working out the way they're supposed to, is because the plan isn't being executed perfectly. Do you understand me on this one? Assuming that any problem with the results is because, we must not be executing the plan perfectly enough because we planned for everything. And I know that if we do it, we're going to get that result that we want. And so continually bringing everything and everyone back to the plan specifically. Now, this is more of an active ignorance of feedback. Okay, those that love the death by planning thing love to plan everything out, again, including how well things are going to work out. And if they don't work out well, it has to be because the plan wasn't executed perfectly. We've got to go look at the spec and whatever. And that's basically just as ridiculous, except you've invested even more energy. Those two account for about, 80 or 90% of the strategies that I see humans and groups of humans doing. Right? Paralysis of analysis and death by planning. But there's another way to do it. There's another way I'm fond of. And I'm noticing that in business circles, it's actually starting to get some credibility, and it's emerging, and people are calling it different things. But it's a strategy, it's a technique that was developed actually by a guy named Kenneth Arrow, and it's called learning by doing. Learning by doing. This is actually an economic concept, little known. And learning by doing is about saying, here's generally what we want to do. We get an idea, maybe we do a little bit of planning. But getting on the road and taking action, and right from the beginning, hooking up the feedback mechanism. Okay, so the reality of what's happening with your ideas and your intentions and your actions, and learning from the beginning, informing from the beginning. Learning by doing. In business, the way that this takes shape is instead of planning out a whole product line or a big product and taking a year to plan the product and figuring out where to get it manufactured and getting the whole thing spec'd out and then going and spending all the money and then putting it on the market, In business, the idea is you create a little baby version of it and you test market it. And if it works, then you scale it up, and if that works, you scale it up. And you want to get something out there as fast as possible to get some real-world feedback, because most things in business don't work. So the more time you spend planning and thinking about it and analyzing it before you take action, the more you're probably wasting time. Someone that I know went to work with a company who planned a redesign of their website, invested a tremendous amount of time, effort, energy, money, hiring people, and knew, because their old website was so poor, they knew that the new website design, which they had been putting off for years or whatever, they knew the website design was at least going to double their revenue. They knew that because their old one was so poor, I mean, obviously. So they put a tremendous amount of time into planning it, into rejiggering it, designing it, hiring people. And then, of course, when they put the new website online and they finally got it going, their sales went down. Oops. Whoops. All right, that's a lot of bad news. Well, we do that stuff all the time. Okay, we assume, okay, if I just do this, then all the problems are going to be fixed over there. But if you do it in the big way, which is you put a lot of time into planning, it doesn't work out. So learn by doing. And here's the rule of thumb in life. You hear me talk about this in my business courses. The rule of thumb I got from an old friend, Mike Hardwick, that I used to work with. And he talked about a study that was done, and I don't remember all the details at this point, but they studied high-income salespeople, and they were trying to figure out what they all had in common, and they couldn't find any common denominator. And then they found one thing. And the one thing was speed of implementation. Okay, the one thing they had in common was that the distance between when they got an idea that was a good one and when they went and implemented it in space and time was very short. They didn't wait around, they didn't think about it. Right? As soon as they got a great idea, bam, they put it into action. It's a rare person that cultivates this capacity and cultivates this habit, speed of implementation. And speed of implementation is so important, not to get the goal, right, or not because it's just a good idea, but it's so important because the faster you implement, the faster you're going to get feedback, and the faster you're going to learn. The faster you're going to learn. Okay, so learn by doing. As we're doing the exercises in this program, we're learning by doing. We're iterating. And what's going to happen is, and it already is happening, you're starting to experience it, it's becoming more natural to do it. Something that seemed in the beginning a little uncomfortable and, oh, how am I doing that? I don't find, what does this one mean? Now you're just going with it. It's a new skill that you have. And by the end of the course, you'll be able to take ideas and iterate them, and you'll be able to do it in your head. And you'll be able to go 3, 4, 5, 10 levels deep in your head before you write the first one down. You'll be able to do it much quicker. It'll be a muscle. Learn by doing. Highly recommended. I just have to mention this quickly. The circles, that there's very little overlap. Humans have figured out a few disciplines, a few things that really help the circles get closer and closer together. One of them is math. Now, I'm no mathematician, or I haven't studied higher math. But the thing that's interesting about math that I haven't even heard anyone talk about exactly, and almost no one notices, is that math is the thing that, and I'm talking kind of general math, basic math. Math is the thing that's essentially the same in the material world as it is in the conceptual world. It's very exacting. Okay, so if I have 5 humans, and then in my head I have the number 5, and 3 of the humans walk away, and there are 2 left, and in my head I take 3 away from 5, I've got 2. It's exacting and it corresponds, and mathematicians, essentially, tolerate no ambiguity. If you want a proof, it's got to be perfect. It can't be like almost there, they'll throw you out. It's got to be perfect. Perfect. Of course, the problem with mathematicians is then they try to make everything perfect and argue with all these human things like emotions and stuff, and that doesn't line up either. But areas like math and chemistry and science are incredibly valuable for the rigor in the methodology and the logic, because they force you to get the circles closer together in that realm. Plato said that learning math and geometry is the foundation you need for learning philosophy. That's a pretty interesting insight. Right? You want to learn math before you learn philosophy. Why? You want to sync these things up. What most of us don't have is a mind that can think in reality terms. Okay, what most of us don't have is a mind that can think in reality terms. And the way that we get to a mind that can think in reality terms is by doing things and getting feedback, and doing things and getting feedback, and trying to line our map of the way things work up with the feedback that's coming back in. Again, manually line up the circles, manually. In business, one of the things that we do a lot of is what's called visual display of quantitative information. That's a fancy word for, fancy term, fancy group of words for press the chart button in Microsoft Excel. The visual display of quantitative information. Visual quantities. You don't have to be a statistician. You don't have to have studied Deming and a bunch of other methods and have a PhD to get tremendous benefit from this. We did not come from an environment where we had to remember and analyze big complex groups of numbers and all the complexity that we're dealing with right now. That's not what we had to do back then. Right? It was like, okay, I and my family sleep in that cave, and I just saw 3 bears walk into it, and then I saw 2 leave. I think we should wait. Right? That's kind of the higher math that we needed back in the day. Right? It's like, okay, that's a big giraffe. I think we better take all of us to get it. You know? That's not the way things are now, okay, in our lives, where we've got to juggle finances and consider, you know, debt and taxes and budgets, and there's a million things that we've got to figure out. One of the best ways to do this when dealing with lots of numbers and math and data is to chart it. And specifically, put it on a run chart, which is the dots on the chart over time that are connected by the lines. Okay, that make the heartbeat style readout. For some reason, the human animal really does well with those. And I'll tell you what, take any data, any number that you've got running in your life, in your business. I don't care if it's how much money you spend personally, you want to get it under control. I don't care if it's how much you weigh, you want to get that under control. I don't care if it's your leads that you're getting into your business, whatever it is. And chart it daily on a run chart like that with the dots and the lines connecting it. Chart it every single day. You go and put the number in the box and then click the chart button. You can do this free on Google Docs. Anyone can do it, or you can do it in Microsoft Excel. And within 90 days of doing it, you'll have a feeling of stability and understanding that will astonish you. It will blow your mind. I've done this numerous times with business people, and usually what I do is I have them start with 5 numbers. How many new leads they're getting? Okay, so how many new incoming calls or traffic or inquiries, new visitors to their website? Number 2, how many subscribers they're getting. On the internet, this would be someone that signs up for your newsletter. If you're, I don't know, you've got people walking into your furniture store, get them to fill out a little information card, call that a subscriber, get them on your list. Number 3, how many sales you're getting, and you can track this either the number of sales you have every day or the total volume of sales, like the dollar amount. Next, income, deposits hitting your checking account every day. And then finally, expenses, how much money is leaving the account. If you just start with those 5 numbers in a business, how many new leads are coming in, how many are getting on the list or subscribing, how many sales are you making, and then your total income hitting the bank account, and then total expenses. You chart those on a chart. It should take you about 5 or 7 minutes total to log into wherever you get these stats and log into your bank account or whatever. Chart them every day for 90 days and look at them and look at the trends. And make sure it's a nice big chart so you can see the direction. And you'll see the variation. It'll go up and down. Run a moving average through the chart. Okay? Start with a 7-day moving average, so you're averaging weeks. Okay, so you smooth kind of the trend. And just watch what happens automatically. Watch what your system does. When humans start getting feedback like that, what we automatically want to do is impact it. We want to improve it. We want to make that sucker go the direction we want. And we naturally start thinking like this. We naturally start thinking systemically. Because instead of our gut and our feeling and kind of like what we feel like doing today being the guide and our intuition, the chart's the new guide. Where's the chart going? Okay, I see what I need to do. And if you really want to take this to the next level, review it with other people once a day. Okay, review it with other people once a day. If you've got a team in your business, everybody pull it up and look at it. Start with that. Very powerful. Because what happens is, when you got a team, and you got 5 numbers or 10 or whatever number you have, everybody quickly gets what the key numbers are. And they start understanding how their paycheck is affected by all this. And then they start looking at the people that are responsible for those numbers, and they go, okay, what do we do here? I mean, the number's going down. What's happening? And the people that are responsible realize, okay, I need to take responsibility for this. And more importantly, they start seeing what works and what doesn't. Okay, the average person they don't want to be hooked up to it because they're afraid it's going to make them look bad. But once they get hooked up to it, they're addicted because it helps them improve. Right? That's the paradox. Okay, so start charting visually. It's a great tool that anyone can use literally for free from a computer. Great tools. And it starts providing regular feedback that makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. Yeah, remember that the most valuable feedback you can get disproves your cherished beliefs. Right? The most valuable feedback you can get disproves a cherished belief. So we really don't learn anything through our successes. Our successes usually make us comfortable and overconfident. And then we get blindsided. Yeah, success doesn't teach us anything except to be overconfident. Which part about the feedback? Oh, the most valuable feedback? Yeah, it disproves your most cherished ideas, beliefs, right? Your map. The most valuable feedback disproves. All right, one more idea. As Wyatt said, focus on the interactions. And feedback is an interaction, right? It's a way of setting up a very efficient way of having the interaction improve the system. There's something about interactions that makes them a paradox. They're the place to put all of your energy, but they're also the place where all the energy is lost. Okay, in a system, whenever there's a handoff from one component to another, that's where a tremendous amount of energy is usually lost. The analogy is, in a modern car, between the engine and the back wheels is usually not a direct connection, because most of them have an automatic transmission that connects the motor with the back wheels. And inside the transmission, okay, as it shifts from gear to gear automatically, most automatic transmissions anyway, there's something that transfers the power, okay, from the front to the back. You know what that is? Anyone? Transmission fluid. Fluid. So the thing that actually is driving, taking the power from the motor and going through the transmission to the back wheels is a fluid. A lot of energy is lost in the fluid. And it only makes sense, right? Transmission fluid. In a human, whenever something transitions between one of our realms, between physical, emotional, and logical, there's usually a huge loss of energy and information, and a very high probability of misunderstanding. You know the game of telephone that children play? They get in a circle, and one of them says, watermelon. And then they say it to the next kid, and it goes all the way around the circle. And by the time it comes over here, it's, I want to go outside and play at recess. And they're like, how did that happen? Right? So much information gets lost in transmission, in translation. And that's all happening in the interactions. So making interactions efficient is a key part of life. So all the leverage comes from the interactions, right? That's where we get the biggest energy leverage. That's where we want to put all of our energy. And that's where all the energy is lost. That's where all the slippage occurs. If you look at what poor people do, one of the things that poor people do pretty consistently is lose a lot of their money at the toll booth, at the interaction points of life. They go to the ATM to get 20 bucks and spend $2 to get it and don't know that they're losing 10% of their net income, their net discretionary income. They don't know that. They look at their credit card and they go, oh, you know what, this one's only 9% interest, so I can buy some stuff on it. And they don't understand that slippage, okay, that toll right there, that loss of energy at the interaction with money is costing them over the rest of their life. They lose a lot at the interactions. And on another level up, what they do is they keep their value in money, or they try to quickly convert any value they get into money. And every time you use money, you lose some of it, because the smarties that are running the whole system have wired it that way. And every time you use your credit card to buy or sell, or every time you use your credit card to buy something, someone's making 3% in there. You following me on this? So slippage is at all these interactions. And you'll notice that if you interact with wealthy people that figured the game out, many of them, and I'm really starting to notice this, many of them have figured out how to get the value into something and keep it there for a long time, growing and growing and growing. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, when they make an investment, they invest with the mindset that we're buying this for life. And guess what the, 90% of people who invest in the stock market and lose money do? They trade a lot. They buy and sell a lot of stocks. And they lose all their money on the fees and on the slippage and all that stuff that happens behind the scenes that they don't even know that they don't know, and they don't notice it. They don't take that into consideration. It's a big deal. Invest in a piece of real estate. You buy a piece of real estate for $100,000. The mind thinks, you know what? If it just goes up 10%, I've made $10,000. Actually, no. If it goes up 10% and then you successfully sell it, you'll be lucky if you get $100,000 back after all the fees that you're going to spend on commissions and everything else. And you don't realize that until you get all the way there and then you need it. So focusing on the interactions is important, but you have to remember that the interactions is where the energy is lost. So they need lots of care and attention and iteration. Lots of care, attention, and iteration, especially if they're between disparate realms, different realms on different dimensions. Okay, so trying to translate from the logical into the physical, there's a huge loss of energy that happens right there because they're so different, and trying to make that work takes a lot of energy. You'll see how this works more in the program, so don't get too caught up on this. But I really want you to understand that this is one of the key pieces of the whole thing, is making these interactions work. Got to pay a lot of attention to tune them, but we lose a lot of energy at them. Okay, so take your next exercise, vision. Write 10 in the lower right corner. And this is exercise number 10. We're going to do another iteration. We're going to do this one fast, 5 minutes. Make sure that you've got one in every box. You may be leaving one behind. You may be leaving a couple of behind. You might have a new one that's come up now. How are you going to incorporate and integrate feedback and interaction? Okay, how will that change your vision? How will that one piece of information change your vision and how you're thinking about it? Go. Giddy up. Again, we're just flexing our muscles. Remember, as you do this, all of this information, very soon, we're going to do one more exercise that's kind of like this, but this is two-dimensional. It's all going to go into a completely different dimension, so don't get too caught up on the content. Just go fast. Just try to integrate, refine, clarify. Here's what I want you to do. Turn to a neighbor, ideally someone you haven't talked to yet. Okay, just someone close to you. 2 minutes apiece. Share what your insight is, your insight from this last section, and the one vision that's been impacted by it the most. Go. All right, good. Who hasn't shared yet, wants to get outside your comfort zone, had a good insight from that little bit? Okay, we've got one here. Come on. Come on. One more. I know there's one more. Okay, right here. Great. Come on up.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm Dustin Hahn from Santa Barbara. And the paralysis by analysis really kind of hit me on the head.
Yeah.
Right now, my business, I'm kind of in like a comfy spot.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I'm afraid to split test new things because I'm like, oh, this is working good, right? And like, if I test a different sequence, what if it's worse, right? And what if people don't like it? So I'm always thinking like, okay, maybe I'll check out this marketing course, right? And get some ideas for like an upsell to how to change it, or, you know, research different ads before I split test these ads that are working. And, it's been like a month and a half, and I haven't done anything because I'm
Yeah.
like, sales are pretty decent right now, and I'm happy, and it's like, I go to the inbox, and it's, exciting, and I'm like, I don't want to jeopardize that. And now I realize, it's not going to leap forward.
So what are you going to do?
I'm going to go home tonight and first just start split testing some ads again and,
Awesome.
try to,
What are you going to set up to know whether it's working?
well, I have my Google Analytics, right?
Oh, so this isn't even like you're going to change it all over and then try to track manual or anything. You're actually going to use technology to do this.
Yeah.
So it's just automated.
Yeah,
and
like
does
I'm
it for
talking
you.
like in my mind and for business, right? So like this part of my challenge was, taking this back to my business. So
Fantastic.
That's,
So you're going to go do it immediately.
yeah, at least, a couple campaigns tonight I can, play with and see where it goes from there.
Do you think you'll have feedback by tomorrow or the next day?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. So if your business crashes, make sure and come and tell us.
Yeah. You'll be the first to know.
Okay, good. Good. Awesome. Great. Get back to us, really. Come up and tell us what happens.
I'm Sharon from Portland.
I love, by the way, how excited everybody gets when they grab these things. Did you see her there? She was like,
Takes a lot of effort to get it out of there.
okay. Portland, Oregon?
Portland, Oregon.
Where do you live in Portland?
Bridalwell,
Where's that?
Multnomah Village.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh. I grew up in Oregon.
I know. I kept hearing
that
it
why
was
you're
a small
here?
town. Partly.
I should say that more often. Maybe we should start canvassing Oregon. All right. What was your insight?
For the past few of these, I had been writing down, developing a daily calendar to keep myself more organized, and then developing that into a weekly and splitting that between the different things that I do. And in the conversation I had with Christine over there, this has been going on for like the last 3 times, just continually. And she brought up this wonderful word, ritual. And somehow that resonated with me much more than developing a calendar of a daily and a weekly task chart.
Excellent. We will talk more about this in the program. What's the difference between a daily calendar and a ritual? What's the difference? Okay, so the calendar's out there, and you can keep messing with it all you want, but if you do the ritual for a while, then you won't have to do the ritual because it'll just do you. It'll just happen, right? Great. That's a systemic change. Excellent.
Johnny LaForest from Oregon.
Oregon. Wyatt was talking about a 1 in a trillion chance earlier. Seems about like that. What part of Oregon are you from?
Corvallis.
You live in Corvallis? That's cool. I grew up out in the boondocks, not too far from Corvallis. She's like, whatever. Okay, what do you got there? What'd you learn?
The big insight I had was that for me, I think the most powerful leverage point for adding feedback into the system, because I thought that I had plenty of feedback simply through paying attention and simply through my commitment to awareness and self-awareness. But actually, since that's all still going through the filters of my perceptions, which are, of course, controlled by the structures, then the most powerful feedback would be introducing other people into the system, which is, of course, the one area I'm the most resistant to. So, but that's where, of course, emergence would happen. A lot more variety, a lot more complexity, and a lot less tainted feedback or filtered feedback. Or
Are you the independent type? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, it's scary, and I can completely relate. Right? Introducing other people to the system to give you feedback. I mean, it is a wild card. I mean, she's running away. She's gone, and I didn't. Look at that. Because there's some part of us that knows if we introduce others and we plug them in, that we are going to change. Right? We just know it. There's some primal part of us that knows if we connect the wires up with others, we're gonna change. It's gonna happen, because that's what humans do. And I'll give you another hint, because as we develop into the program, what you may have guessed is we're going to start talking about the things to impact in a system that have the highest leverage, and specifically, the things to impact in the mind system to have the highest leverage on the world, and the things to impact in the world to have the highest leverage on the mind. And one of them, if not the one, is other people around you. Because, definition of human, more than one, we're already wired to be influenced by them in a million different ways. And I believe that taking control of the process of the people that we have around us, that little bit of willpower that we get, taking control of that process, is one of the ultimate leverage points we have in our life.